It is time.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the last session of the day, and thank you for joining us at the Microsoft Self-Service Password Reset and our experience at Wichita State University. My name is Milissa Hawkins. I'm the manager of the Technology Help Desk.
I'll go next because that way Jason can just lead right into the first topic. I am Brett Morrill. I'm the director of Enterprise Applications and Development. It's like the third title I've had since I've been in that position now for 10 years. But it's market-based from our HR people. So there you go.
So I'm Jason Holmes. I'm the manager or the director of server infrastructure. And so all of the system admin stuff and technical things fall into my area. I'm actually a substitute for this, so I know some stuff and I don't know other stuff, but I'll do my best. So starting off, password reset. Everybody's got to do it. You've got to have it. You've got to have something there when people forget their passwords. It's a problem that everybody has to deal with, and historically we've had to deal with it in a lot of different ways. If we go back far enough, we had different user IDs for different systems, different password systems for those user IDs. And 20 years ago when we implemented Banner, the university got sold on the pipe dream of single sign-on, which we dutifully tried to implement. We did better than I thought we would. We actually did a lot of good things that led us to where we are now and made our implementation of Microsoft Self-Service Password Reset a lot easier, and identity management in general a lot easier. We pushed forward with a single credential, a single ID for everyone, so that we could get rid of the first initial last name over here and the last name over there and the first name over there, and boiled it down so everybody had a single credential that they had to use for logins everywhere. That was great. We still had multiple password stores, so we had to have passwords in the mainframe, we had to have passwords in Oracle, and we had to have passwords in a Sun LDAP server, and we had to have passwords in Microsoft. And so in order to manage all of that, a homegrown system was put together that could reach into each of those different systems and set passwords. And that worked for us for a long, long time. The problems with that, the challenges that we ran into are many.
So it's a simple on-off.
Wow, that was awesome.
All right, I don't know what that was, but
That's the ghost of single sign-on?
the ghost of single sign. So where was I? So we had a homegrown password reset program that could reach into all those systems, set passwords. Worked really well for us for a long time. One of the big challenges that we had was every time a new rule set came down, a new requirement came down, somebody had to crack that code, make the modifications, go through the test cycle, redeploy it, and that became kind of an issue, kind of a hard thing to do every time something new came along. The opportunities that started presenting themselves to us were all of those different places we needed to change passwords started to consolidate. So our mainframe was there for student information and finance. We brought in Banner. That eventually went away. One thing off the list. Banner, our student information system, our ERP, they moved from an Oracle Forms-based application to a web-based application that we were able to tie back to Active Directory instead of directly to Oracle. Our portal, we were able to do some configuration changes and tie that back to Active Directory instead of a Sun directory. So there were a number of things that were kind of coming together that gave us some opportunities to rethink what we were doing with password management and see if there was maybe an easier way to go about it than to maintain that custom program that had to reach in and do the different things. And Brett can talk about the custom program.
The homegrown program, yeah, like Jason said, because of all the different stores that we had and the pipe dream of single sign-on, that I know we all are trying to chase that elusive unicorn, given all the different ways that vendors in higher ed, implement sign-on. Back in the day, prior to being a director, when I was a developer, there were other developers that wrote basically using Microsoft products, .NET, et cetera, to build this thing out. And like Jason said, there was a lot of overhead involved with trying to maintain that when different rules came down. The state of Kansas, well, it needs to be 8 characters, now it's 12. Now you need an upper, a lower, a number, maybe a special character, but it can't be these special characters. At one point, we assigned a developer to modernize it. She sat around and thought, this is the greatest project that I can work on to try this new thing, .NET Nuke. Totally rewrote it in a technology stack that no other developer in our group understood, and then she promptly left and went to it. So we had to rewrite it back in something that we knew. The other thing is, as we're sitting here at a lot of different presentations today and probably through tomorrow, the threat matrix out there is just evolving quite rapidly. And so when I became a director, it's probably easy to say I would sit around and twitch, thinking that we have a homegrown password management program out there that is probably being beat on by people that are way smarter than we are, that are getting funded by nation states, mafia, whatever, to actually break into our system. And so it kind of came to a point where it was like, we really just need to retire this thing, go with one of the big boys that's out there, put something in place that, has a track record, and that if all else fails, like one of our chief data officers is fond of saying, if something goes wrong, we can point the finger at them, and it's not our responsibility. So, Melissa, do you want to talk a little bit about the self-service tools that we had?
Sure. Our tools were very limited for users with the old password system. They could recycle their passwords, so it became a problem. We had lots of account takeovers. People were able to use the word password for their password. And we had one particular student that within 3 days, his account was hacked, obviously. And when he came in to reset his password, tried to reset it, he said password 12. And I was like, no. So obviously people were not
Good morning, everyone.
At making good passwords.
How's everybody doing today?
Well,
wow.
Welcome to Kansas State again. University here at the College of Business Building.
Okay.
And welcome to 2024 CHECK Conference here at Kansas State University. My name is Waldo Berry, and I'm the chairman for the CHECK committee here this year for CHECK. I want to just do a few opening remarks.
Yeah, that was like the starting session, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I do not know why that happened or it happened twice. If it happens 3 times, we're shutting it down.
Awesome. Hey, you've grown password management program? Oh.
Right? So with that, we had a lot of challenges that we wanted to try to do something different because it really wasn't working. The amount of accounts, we would have anywhere from 30 to 50 users at a time that they would bring down. And so trying to, at the help desk, deal with those users and work with our security team and our Windows Server team to, can we re-enable them? Can we do this? So it really became problematic. So in that, we chose a new password system. Why Microsoft?
Why Microsoft? Well, that's a good question. The reality is it was easy. We really didn't do a big search for different password tools. We were already big Microsoft users. We had Microsoft 365 fully deployed across the environment, and we were already syncing all our users from our on-premise Active Directory up to Microsoft. They were already there. So it was really just the easy answer. They had the modern tool set for self-service password reset. They had the password rule validation functionality that kept people from setting their password to part of their ID or part of their name or to password one. And that didn't have to be custom coded every time that something new came along. So there was really, like I said, it wasn't a hard decision to look at that and say, yeah, that's probably the right direction to go for us. We were already, we have a lot of integrations with Microsoft tools and Active Directory in general as our password store for single sign-on, and having that password change mechanism right there within Microsoft really made a lot of sense for us. We're also Microsoft Defender shop, so the password change logs and whatnot kind of feed into that same ecosystem for high risk activity alerts and that sort of thing. So that was a big plus for us as well. The other big thing that came to us through this setup as well is it really poised us well to deploy Microsoft multi-factor authentication for our students. A lot of the same stuff that we had to have for password management, we were going to need for Microsoft multi-factor authentication anyway. So getting that into place and starting to use the Microsoft self-service password reset was kind of a stepping stone to get toward an even more secure situation with Microsoft's multi-factor authentication.
I think as far as technical debt, have I mentioned technical debt? There was a lot of technical debt with the homegrown system, especially the fact that it had passed through about 4 different developers before we got to choosing the new product. And like I say, I mean, I kid you not, I think there were times I was seriously worried about how strong is this? What could people do with it? The idea of going to a product was great. I will admit the challenge amongst my developers was quite large for them to want to adopt this. What about? What is it going to send out emails? No, I don't think it's going to send out emails. You know, we'll talk about some of this here. Well, what about, can we customize it? Well, no. What about, it's not our problem. What do you mean it's not our problem? It's not our problem anymore. You get to go develop what we need you to develop and stop worrying about password. But the user community, no. We need to get to something that is more, professional, out of the box, ready to go. Stop worrying about all that stuff. It's not your problem anymore. And trying to get that mindset to shift and understand that you no longer are carrying this thing, being responsible for it is going to outweigh any of the problems that you think are going to come at us. And so I was 100% behind this, even if my staff wasn't.
So let's go ahead and start with you about the implementation process and what that looked like for your team.
Implementation, when it comes to us and they're like, hey, we need data. We need data from you. Can you get us data? So we needed, first of all, I don't know, at your institutions, we have like 15 definitions of what a freshman is. Which one do you want? What's a student? Who's a student? What does that population look like? Can you pull out their ID? That was pretty simple. When we started getting to alternate email addresses so that we could populate it with that so that we could send out notifications for reset, we had eventually gotten to the point with the old system. I think originally we maybe started with 3 security questions, and then somebody came along and said, look, there's that student that supposedly had to turn in their paper before midnight and their account got locked and there's no help desk help in the middle of the night. So we eventually got to the point where we were collecting emails, built-in self-service, reset functionality for them. But we did not have, because we had some holdouts who did not want to give us a personal email address in our legacy system to be able to set their own password, because they just relied on the security questions. So we did the best we could to collect the data that we had to try and port it up there. I think, we even tried to tell campus, please go in and update that data, tried to force them to update that data, but you're never going to have 100% data accuracy.
So from the help desk perspective, we wanted to make sure that we tried to select a time where we would have fewer people on campus and the impact to start it, to see what it would look like for the help desk, because we knew that we would get lots of calls. It looks different. Why am I seeing this screen? So we decided to go the middle of July, and we met, we got communication together, set that up, and we systematically sent that out to our students, to our faculty staff. I sent personal messages to all of our admissions groups, tried to hit all the advisors. Unfortunately, it's one of those things that during the summer, some people are less available. And so that was one of our challenges as well. It was just one of those things that timing is never going to be good for everyone. So
Can I ask a quick question? How many of you have faculty that leave in May and never, ever, ever check anything again until August? Yeah, exactly. Just checking, asking for a friend.
You mean August or September?
Whenever they decide to show back up on campus and start teaching again.
right?
I mean, technically we start paying them again in August, but that doesn't mean they actually arrive on campus at that point. That's right. Good point.
It's very true. We put together step-by-step instructions, pictures, so there's less confusion. And then we also had some training for our help desk. This is brand new. What is it going to look like? What are the calls going to be like? We had a good idea, but we'll talk about some of the challenges. And Jason, you're up.
So on the implementation side, the technical piece was really pretty straightforward, and a lot of that was because of the fortunate history that I talked about early on. We already had users synced up to Microsoft. We already had a single ID for everybody. We already had most of our applications authenticating against Active Directory. So the synchronization pieces were already in place. The Azure AD Sync Connect was there and running, synchronizing things. The biggest thing that we had to do was, on the technical side, was activate bidirectional syncing. So we were syncing passwords up to Microsoft, but until this point, we were not allowing people to change passwords in Microsoft and syncing them back. So that took a little bit of research and consternation to figure out whether this was going to screw anything up or whether it was going to be okay. But at the end of the day, it really ended up being kind of a non-event. It was as one of my Windows admins likes to say, I can do it right now. It's just a flip of a switch, and a lot of stuff in Microsoft is like that. You can go and turn it on right now. Of course, the consequences of that sometimes are not what you expect. But in this situation, turning on that bidirectional sync was really the big technical piece that we still had to do in order for this to work. And everything worked pretty well from the technical side from that perspective.
Then came the challenges.
Well, I'm
The
going to
users.
start. The challenges at the help desk were quite a few. We didn't realize that the help desk would need more access to Entra to be able to see information, to update some information, and so there were conversations happening because we were putting in tickets and sending it to our server team, and then the backlog that they were receiving, so we quickly amended that, and so that was very helpful for us to be able to see those things. But then when we could see them, then it was situations like we have the user's information, but they can't set a password because there's no alternative email address there, so there's no way to identify them. And so the challenge was to try to track those users, because some did, some didn't, trying to be able to pull those out and get the information to Brett and to Windows and have them communicate together. So we were constantly busy, and so trying to gather that data in real time was difficult. But we got through it, but we were able to get there. big challenge, people had difficulty just setting a good password. They were so used to being able to set something, shocker 1, 2, 3, 4, that they struggled to set a password. Oh, help me? What can I use? And so we came up with a few ideas to kind of start them on their way with that. But that was a problem. And then we also had users, because we didn't have the ability to send emails to remind them that their password had expired. So they show up and their password is no longer good. What do I do now? How do I navigate this? And so that was a learning curve.
Did you have any option to generate a password for them?
So depending on what web browser they were using, that provided an option for them right away. But honestly, we don't recommend that because most of the time they don't remember it. And when they write it down, they write something down wrong and have to set their password again. And one of the other challenges that we had that it took us a long time to fix this issue, if a person were to they had already logged into the device and they go in and reset their password, sometimes Microsoft did not say, you've changed your password. And so they set their password, reset it, but they aren't sure what they set it to because they've tried multiple times. And then it wasn't until later that it took 3 hours for that to process for them to be able to set a password again. So that was a big challenge that took us a long time to identify.
You ready for me?
I'm ready.
Yeah,
for you.
from my side, there were kind of two big challenges. The first one is, and I will say, I will warn you about this. We at least had a process because of a prior president and his 30-year-old son who tried to enroll in our university, and it suddenly became a mission for that president of anybody should be able to walk into admissions, apply, and then walk right across the hall and enroll in classes at that moment after they've been admitted. And so we literally had a process running every 15 minutes that would go through and try and provision AD accounts so that people could log in, and that's as short of a time span as we could possibly get. When we implemented this, we had to kind of lengthen that a little bit to about 30 minutes because we could provision the AD account, but then we had to let it sync to the cloud, and then we had to send the alternate email address up to the cloud. Some of that's custom code. It's coming out of our SYS, which is in an Oracle environment. We then had to have that picked up and put into a SQL Server environment, which then ran through, and it kind of spanned a developer in my area and a developer in Jason's area. And we started getting calls from our admissions office. Well, these people can't set their passwords. Well, what we started getting, and this frustrated Jason and I don't think I'm exaggerating there, my guy would point at his guy and go, it's his problem. My stuff is working great. And his developer would look at my guy because it was in PowerShell and go, the data's not there, it's his problem. He's not picking it up. And we ran around in circles for about 2 weeks. I think I was standing in our CIO, our boss's office, and he's like, you need to get to the bottom of this. So I don't know if you guys have ever seen the comedians Key and Peele. They did this little bit with President Obama, his anger translator. So just turn on your anger translator for a minute because while I said it the way I said it to my boss, I'm going to tone it down since we're being recorded here. To basically, I said, I am more than happy to pull those two guys into a room and look at them and say, I am sorry, you guys are not competent enough to write code. We are going to start from the very beginning. We are going to go all the way through your process because apparently you guys aren't smart enough to figure this out, and we're going to figure out what's going on. Well, we started literally tracking through from the very beginning. Somebody comes in and they have an application, boom, they hit this table, we can see the record that's created. They get admitted, boom, we can see the exact time, date, records created. We can see when it's picked up through an audit trail. They had an audit trail that showed, okay, these are the rows that got moved out of our student information system over into SQL Server, and then he had a row at the bottom that showed, here's the stuff I put in the file. Okay, well, stuff happens in there, right? Why aren't you tracking audit records there? Well, why would I want to do that? So you know that your program is working. Write audit records out. Okay, fine. And so after I went around and around with my developer, he put that logging in there, and 30 minutes after he did that, he comes in, he goes, oh my God, I had a bad SQL join. I assumed that if they were in table A, they would be in table B, but that's not the case. Do you know how hard it was to look at him and go, yeah, that's interesting, instead of going, duh. You know, they aren't. Just because you're in this table, you're not in this other table. So once we got that ironed out, but then we had to explain to admissions that, you know, yes, there was, we got this plugged, everything's fine. But that came back to haunt me, because our admissions people, they're great, love them to death, but they have feelings. And I had to deal with feelings. I feel like there's a lot of students out there that aren't able to set their passwords. I feel like there's a lot of applicants that can't get into our system. I feel like we're losing a lot of students that could be admitted. Okay, can you send me IDs? How many IDs? Well, here's 7. Are there more? Well, no, it's just these 7. Out of the 150 IDs we created yesterday, 7 of them couldn't set their password. Well, I feel like there's more. I'm so tired of I'm usually an empathetic guy, but I'm kind of tired of feelings at this moment. So there you go. The other thing is Microsoft, their reset page is very Spartan. Mm-hmm. Hey, can you brand that? No, we can't brand it. We don't have the ability to do that. Hey, could you put text out there that actually shows the students how to set up what the password should be? No, we can't modify that page. We really think that you guys should modify that page. We can't. It's Microsoft's page. They own it. We don't own that code. We can't change it. Well, could you put some pictures out there on it that, no, we don't own the page. We can't modify the code. So
we have instructions.
Yeah, which, did Melissa mention that we have instructions that have a lot of pictures in them? Apparently, students and faculty and staff don't read picture books. I'm not sure if Interpretive Dance YouTube would have done any better, you know, with how to set your password.
Are you volunteering?
I could give it a shot.
Okay.
So anyway, it was just challenging, and I'll be honest with you, after we got things ironed out, and we did audit it very closely then for probably a couple of months after we got that problem fixed.
We did.
Started noticing that there was a decline, almost to 0. I mean, occasionally an account would drop out for some odd reason. I mean, nothing's 100% perfect, right? But we were running pretty good percentage of accounts created. Still, to this day, several months ago, I think I had heard from my boss, Ken, that our admissions director was over in we call it Morrison Hall, our executive building, in a strategic enrollment management meeting going, I feel like there's kids that aren't able to set their passwords because their accounts aren't created. You can just make a blanket statement like that. IT is now under the bus, and we're having to prove that, no, the process works. Yes?
I'm curious, do you have anyone on staff that's a UI UX specialist that could do user research and provide the data that either there is a problem or there is not? Because really, if you do the proper research, you have data that show that there really is a problem or there really isn't.
So what we did is we did kind of do something like that. After we got that enhanced logging, which, by the way, did I mention that we put enhanced logging all the way through the process? That was instrumental, because at one point, our admissions director decided to call a meeting, and it was going to be with him, me, maybe one of his other people, and the CIO. It was great. CIO had me, here's the examples you gave us. There's 7 people, look through them. We get on the Zoom call, and like his entire staff of admission people are on there that we didn't know were going to be there. And the conversation started with, well, you guys, I invited all these people here. We're going to talk about what we're experiencing with the high school kids, because we feel like you need to know what's actually happening, because I think there's a bigger problem. Okay, well, just want to make sure. You sent us 7, right? Is that, because these are the ones you're sending us. Let's walk through that. And so my boss had me show on the screen, and so you have this entire Zoom full of admissions people, and it's like, all right, let's go ID number 1. We see that it came into the SIS as an applicant at this point. You can see on this date, at this time, at this exact second, this thing happened. Trigger fired, it's over here, date time stamp. You then see it being picked up and processed over into the provisioning system, this date and time stamp. You see it going in, you see date time stamp, date time stamp, date time stamp, bam, created. And here's when the system actually shows us that they created a password. All right, number 2, boom, 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 boom. Number 3, boom, 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 boom. and you literally saw faces on the Zoom go, oh, yeah, we've got the numbers, we're showing what's going on, and we're actually tracking these issues that you had. And then talking with Melissa, who was a great help, she would be like, oh yeah, I remember that one. They were having a hard time figuring out how to set a 12-character strong password.
Yep.
Oh yeah, I remember that one, password setting. They couldn't come up with the passwords. And so, yes, you're right. I think that, did you want to go with the challenges? I don't think you've had.
I will go with challenges.
Go for
But
it.
yes, but then we can come back to the
Technical
lessons
challenges.
learned. Challenges.
Technical challenges. So on the technical side of things, there were a lot of data and timing related challenges, and Brett's talked to most of them, so I won't belabor them too much. I'll belabor them a little bit just because that's how I am.
Sorry.
So the big problem, one of the big problems that we had is was not the initial data load. Initial data loads are easy. You pull out all the email addresses, you jam them up there, you're done. It's all of the new provisioning that causes us problems. So one of the big problems we had there is we can't provision our users directly in Azure. There's stuff that we need them to have that they only get if we provision them locally. So that's fine. We can provision users locally. Now they got to sync up there. Okay, that's fine. There's no way to set an alternate email address on your local Active Directory. You can only set that in Azure. So we've got to provision those users down here in our local Active Directory, wait for them to sync, and then sometime later come along and push that alternate email up there. That's one of the big reasons that we had to go from a 15-minute process to a 30-minute process. There was just a lot of timing stuff that we had to sort out there. And figuring that out and getting the timing just right, and the sync is not gospel. I mean, 15 minutes is usually long enough, but if Microsoft's running some Bitcoin mining process or something and their servers are slow, 15 minutes might not hit. So that became kind of a challenge. The other challenge that we ran into with the syncing is the synchronization was done with our Active Directory Sync Connect. Connects to our Active Directory, syncs up to Microsoft. Well, that runs every 30 minutes or every 15 minutes or whatever from the time when you start it. So when the system admins go and patch and the server reboots, it's now running at a different time. And so the process here where the timing is so crucial that the account gets created before the email tries to get applied up in the cloud gets broken. And that was a real challenge, and we had some issues figuring that out and getting to a point where that was successful in the high 90s range in terms of success. The other challenge that we ran into was really just a knowledge challenge. So we had to push data up into Microsoft Azure Active Directory, and we weren't really doing that. We were syncing it because we could do everything in normal Active Directory and it just went up there. Well, this wasn't down here, so it wouldn't sync. And so we ended up having to learn all of the ins and outs of Microsoft Graph so that we could make that connection and push that data up there. And there's a lot of nuances to that I don't know or understand, but the security between your on-premise environment and Azure, there's a lot of permissions things between the server that's making the connection and the application that's making the connection, and you've got to set the permissions just right so that it has permission to add an email address up there. And so that was a big learning curve, and it really did slow down our implementation process as we sorted through the ins and outs of Microsoft Graph and what had to be in place for that to function successfully. So what did we learn?
So the lessons that we learned, communication is probably one of the biggest things that I think I learned. There are a lot of groups on campus that I think we would set meetings. We would talk about this because unfortunately there are a lot of people that it was brand new news to them. And so they're coming back from their vacations and different things and wow, why weren't we notified that we have to change our information to all of our new admitted students? And so I think we try to get the information out there, but I would be more proactive in the way that we would try to contact those groups and advisors so they're informed. And then communication within the team ourselves. I think that setting up regular meetings to check in, how is the process going, what's happening, do we need to do some testing? It was fast and furious, and so we were all doing the best, but we could do better. So those are the things that I think I took away from that.
On the technical side, the biggest thing that we missed in the run up to the implementation was we didn't have audit reports in place to see who didn't have an alternate email set. And so that's something that would have been really handy. So, when, like Brett was talking, there was a join that was giving us the wrong stuff, that would have presented itself pretty early on in the process if we would have had those audit reports in place to say, hey, these 27 people don't have an alternate email address. And go, well, why don't they have an alternate email address? And we could have gone through that troubleshooting process a little bit earlier in the process and maybe saved some pain and suffering there.
Yeah, and I'm going to come back to, feelings. This process will get blamed for everything. So please plan more time than you ever expected to deal with that. Like I said, we're still a couple months ago. I think admissions is just trending down. The population of students is getting smaller that are viable for college. So all of us are going to have tremendous admissions pressures put on us. And it's real easy to say, we tried and it didn't succeed to get these people instead to go, it was because IT changed the password thing. That's why if they hadn't have done that, or they could have customized it, or they could have made it easier, or they could have done that video of interpretive dance on how to, then the students would be here. And like I say, it seemed like there for a while, Jason and I would joke about, we just need to go drink, because it was like constantly dealing with, here we go. I had planned this week and it was going to be great and I was going to get a lot done. Instead, I spent like 70% of it pulling data from the audit reports and tracking an individual from the start of the process through the process to prove that it had been provisioned like we anticipated. There was some other issue, talking with Milissa, and so just be aware, you're going to spend some time, more than you think, before it quiets down and the noise kind of, reaches a normal level. So just anticipate that. And I would say one more thing.
Yes.
It doesn't hurt also to test that process, like Jason said, end to end, as best you can, so that you can discover that bad join before you actually get it into production.
Absolutely. Are there any questions?
Yeah, I believe I heard you say you were already on Office 365 and sending your users up to the cloud.
Yes, that's correct.
So when you went to set up SSPR and had to do the password right back, what kind of was that involved in getting that to go?
I didn't do it myself, but my understanding was, literally it was going into an admin panel and flipping a switch. Because we already had all of the synchronization pieces in place, those synchronization pieces were capable of moving things back and forth.
That's true. There's a switch in the
Yeah.
365 admin, but I meant on your Active Directory side or on the infrastructure side.
I don't think we had to do anything on the on-premise Active Directory side. The synchronization service took care of it.
Because we've looked at this a few times, thing that you don't have in place yet is the password right back.
Yeah. The person who actually flipped the switch is out on medical leave, but if you want to talk to somebody, I can get you in touch with the right people.
Yeah, we're just, yeah, couldn't remember what our roadblock was and go on that next step. Do you remember?
You had a question.
I know you were talking about the Microsoft Defender giving you like the high-risk security alerts. Did it help you do your auditing when they weren't coming up with complex enough passwords? Was it that granular?
So it would say that it's a fuzzy password. So if they were using Shocker or 1234, so in the audit log, it does provide information when we're trying to assist them. And so when we see that they've done that, we ask them, what are you using? Because obviously they're not going to use that password again. And then try to point them in a right direction. We've come up with 2 or 3 things to be able to tell the users that point their mind in a direction that they usually can set a password. So once we resolve the time frame issue, it's been a lot smoother.
But it just says that there was an issue with setting the password.
And it does tell them that it's easily guessable.
Actually, I have 2 questions. So the alternate emails, where do those go? What attribute do those save to? Is that not just the proxy addresses in the cloud?
I don't know off the top of my head what attribute that is.
That's what I just looked up. There's a proxy address.
Yes, so you can actually save them to an on-prem property called proxy addresses, and then they will sync to the
And then
cloud.
you can do a transfer from one
A translation?
translation from one to the other.
Is the person,
I'll have to look at that.
purpose of the personal email address as part of the password reset to send like a,
Sends a token, a URL, a token.
You can't log into your Outlook account if you're logged out of your account, so.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we do that too.
They get a verification code that they then have to put in to verify that it is them setting the password, and that's why we
but I
do that.
don't think proxy address field and Active Directory will work for that, because that's gonna say it's the same as your tenant email address.
So proxy address is an array. You can have more than one.
Right.
So you can put their personal email as an alternate proxy address that you can send an email. Or no, wait, no, proxy addresses is for your Exchange account. You're right. You're right. That won't work.
So it'd have to be a different attribute that would then map up to whatever they need.
Then my second question was, so are you guys using Azure single sign-on, like intra-ID authentication?
For many things, yes.
Or have you guys done the company branding piece for single sign-on?
Yes.
And the password reset screen isn't obeying that? Because my research has said that was supposed to drive off the company branding for single sign-on.
It probably depends on what level of branding you're doing. I know we've got a splash page on the back that's a custom splash page, and I think we've got some logos on the user ID password box as well, but those do not show up on the self-service password reset. And it's possible that we've done it in a non-standard way, and there's a different way that it will show up, but I don't know.
There wasn't much to that branding. I just sat down with our marketing webmaster 2 weeks ago to do our branding page because we're currently migrating to Azure single sign-on. So
Yeah.
There wasn't much to it. So I was under the understanding that also drove the self-service password page, but apparently
That has not been our experience.
Right, yeah. And even if you were able to brand it, then you get into, well, could you put the instructions out there? Could you give them examples of what they can't use? Can you?
Yeah.
Any other questions? Because we are a little past
A
time.
little past time, but we're the last session, so we can go as long as we want to.
Not really.
Yeah, because I know you all want to get checked into your hotels and get over and get your beverages going and then have dinner, so.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Well.